probably the most important part of the whole process is when I connect with other people and when people connect with the work. It often surprises me how emotional people get and how much they connect with something that I made. And in doing and in connecting with my sculpture, they're connecting with me. My parents were both a big influence on me, even though they were not professional artists. My mother played concert piano, my father painted in oils, and when we were on vacations, we were constantly going through art galleries, museums. So as a small child, I was exposed to a tremendous amount of art. I also had a grandfather. He was my Grandpa Lockwood, my father's father, and he was a rock hound. We lived close to the gold country in California, and we would go to these dry riverbeds, and he liked to make jewelry. So he would look for agates, tourmaline, different types of rocks that you find in that area. And he would just spot these beautiful rocks in the middle of this dry riverbed where there was, there's just nothing. So I think he taught me how to see the extraordinary in the ordinary. And so I think he really gave me that appreciation for nature and the gifts that nature gives us every day, and it's right there, but you just have to see it. And then of course there's my mentor, Sigmund de Tonencourt, who I learned from when I was 17. I met him at a dinner party, and he brought his portfolio and he started showing everybody what he was doing, and I just remember looking at the images and the artwork that he was doing, and I was so taken by the work. I just was so enamored with what he was doing, and I didn't know why. I'm 17 years old. I didn't know what I was attracted to, but I knew that I liked it. And by the end of the party, he was talking to some other people, and he said, hey, I'm looking for somebody to do my hand sanding. And I just, across the room, I'll do it. And then I immediately thought, oh, what have I done? Maybe I can't do this. But anyway, I started sanding for him a couple weeks later. And then within a couple of months, he said to me, I think you can do this. I'm going to teach you how to carve. And I remember thinking, there's no way I can't do this, because he's using a chainsaw and all these power tools I had no experience with. I was terrified of the chainsaw. And he just kept pushing and kept, talking to me about teaching me. And I finally said, okay, I'll do it. But I loved it immediately. I immediately thought it was just the most fun I've ever had in my life. I'm looking for pieces on the beach. I'm really looking to connect with the piece. But I'm looking for an energy and a shape. Sometimes, obviously I'm doing figurative work for the most part. But I'm looking for, sometimes I'll see a piece and I'll just see the curve of a hip, or I'll see a waistline, or I'll see hair, something that draws me to the piece. I do often think about where this piece came from. Where was the original tree growing? What part of the world was it growing in? Because sometimes driftwood comes from a lot further away than you would think. I think about what forest was the tree in? What animals were living in the forest or in the tree or around the tree? What was the storm like that came along and blew this tree down? To think about them just being completely uprooted and thrown into a river, and then the tree goes down into the ocean, and then the waves break up the tree, and that's what makes the driftwood. So it's very interesting. The journey that the piece of wood has taken to get to me is fascinating. Starting the work, I have a very loose idea of what I want to do. I want it to tell me its story. I don't want it to be all my story. So that's a collaboration between myself and the piece of driftwood. because the material has its own voice and its own, it will tell you what it wants. The main design decisions that I have to make, or that I think are important, are what am I going to carve and what am I going to leave this beautiful, the driftwood is so beautiful. I always want to leave some of the natural wood. And then the next step is the chainsaw, which is one of my favorite parts of the process because, for one thing, it's very fast, it's very immediate, but it also, as I'm working, it's being a subtractive process. In the act of using the saw and in that subtractive process, things go flying off and things break off and I make a cut or the saw slips and it turns into something that I wasn't really planning on, but that's part of the excitement of the chainsaw and of that first half an hour of the process is so important. And you're making a decision every second, so it's very immediate and it's very exciting. I've always been drawn to the human form. And when I learned to carve, I had only been carving for a couple years and I went to college. And I was an art major in the beginning, and then I got into art history and I started studying, the ancient Greek sculpture, Rodin, Michelangelo, all that, vein of sculptors. And I became just fascinated with the human form. But I also think the driftwood is very feminine. It has a femininity to it because it's curvy and it's been smoothed by the waves and it's just this undulating form all by itself. A lot of people ask me, why do you do so many female figures? And I think it's because the driftwood is feminine. The patina started in a very interesting way. I was working on a commission for a collector, and let's just say it wasn't going well. And I got so frustrated, and my partner, Tommy, came to me and said, well, let's just do something else with it. Let me experiment with it. And I said, okay, well, what are you going to do? And he said, I want to put a patina on it. And I thought, okay, I said, I don't ever want to see it again. I'm not going to finish it. And I just handed it over to him. And then he said, well, there's 3 colors. What colors do you want me to put on? I said, just put it all on there. So he did, and it came out so amazing. And I ended up showing it at my next show, and it sold within, the first hour of the show. And so that's kind of where the patina started. Tommy has a background. He worked on movie sets for many years. He was a set builder. And he did a lot of faux finishes for the movies, so he knew how to do it. And it's actually a paint that has real pieces of copper in it, or real pieces of bronze, or real pieces of iron in the rust patina. And so it's a real chemical reaction. I love that look of just that ancient, really old piece of bronze that has changed over time due to weather and elements and oxidization. And so I think that was another reason that I really liked doing the patina. And it's a beautiful combination with the wood. There are absolutely times when I do not feel like carving. I do not feel, sometimes it's just I'm uninspired, sometimes I'm just tired. It's hard to say where it comes from. But very often my solution to that is to walk out in nature and to be in the trees. Other times I will literally force myself to come out to my studio, and I will just sit and turn on my music and start a fire and just sort of get cozy and just literally look at all the driftwood. And in the act of doing that, something will jump out at me. I grew up in California, and I lived in Hawaii for 8 years in the interim, and so I've always lived in very warm climates. I never thought I would ever leave California. I have a collector, also a very good friend, who called me one day and started, he lives up here. And I had been up here before. I'd been doing shows in Seattle in the Bellevue area in the summer. So I had been to Whidbey Island before, and I knew I loved it. And he just called out of the blue and said, hey, what's going on? He always calls me kiddo. What's going on, kiddo? And I said, I got to get out of here. I think I was just craving nature. And he said, well, why don't you move to Whidbey Island? And I thought, well, that's a lot further north than I thought I wanted to go. He sort of opened this door for us, said, here's a house, here's a barn, you can carve in the barn, just sort of opened this door. And we just took a leap of faith and moved up here. And it's the best move I think I've ever made in my life. I think it's the most beautiful place I've ever lived in my life. And that includes Hawaii. I know that seems crazy, but I love the big trees, the fresh air, the nature, and of course I'm living on an island surrounded by driftwood, so I couldn't be happier. Everywhere I go, there's driftwood. So I'm like a kid in a candy store here. So I have been asked to teach my entire life. Every show that I've ever been to, I would have 10, 20 people coming up and asking me to teach them. And I never, part of it's being very busy and trying to keep up with the galleries and the shows. But I think part of it was I thought, well, I don't want to give away my secrets. About 5 years ago, my mentor passed away. Ziggy passed. And I thought, oh my gosh, he's gone and he's not going to teach any more people. He taught other people besides me. And I just all of a sudden had this strong desire to teach. So now I'm teaching workshops here on my 5 acres, and it turns out I love teaching. I love seeing the students take off and just be so excited and really get into the tools and the driftwood, and then seeing their finished products at the end of the class. It is so fun to see them, just be so excited about carving. Probably the most important thing about what I do is the connecting with other people, and then of course with the teaching, connecting with the students, connecting with the collectors on an emotional level, I think is one of the most valuable and beautiful parts of my creativity. My desire as an artist is to help people connect with nature, with themselves, and with each other. We share this life together, shaped by the wind and the sea, changed by our journey, and like the driftwood, stronger and more beautiful.